The shooting range. In this episode, Pages of History, Robin Old's amazing battle. Triathlon, comparing top-wheeled tanks. And metal beasts, an uncharacteristic Mirage. The French Mirage family is more than some aircraft. They're masterpieces of design recognizable all over the world. A simple body with delta wings and no horizontal tail looks so stunning that even people uninterested in aircraft might fall in love with it. But there are also machines in this family with more classic designs, just as beautiful, and their performance is on a par with their tailless siblings. Please welcome another new aircraft of the Wind of Change update. A top multi-role French fighter, the Mirage F1C. This aircraft is propelled by a turbojet engine with an afterburner. The space in the fuselage and the wing consoles is occupied by self-sealing fuel tanks. The nose cone hides the onboard radar system. Its fixed armament is two 30mm autocannons with a total ammo pool of 270 rounds. The machine can also carry bombs of various calibers, unguided rockets, gun pods, and air-to-air missiles with infrared and radar homing devices. Previous machines of this family have become famous with their amazing flight performance. And no wonder. Having good dynamics and excellent maneuverability makes them dangerous enemies in the sky. But there's also a traditional flaw, a shortage of weaponry. Competitors have 4, 6, or even 8 missiles on hardpoints, while all Mirage's Series 3 are limited by only 3 launches. The F1C is here to fix that. This aircraft is much less agile due to its increased mass, but its upgraded firepower more than compensates for that. 4 air-to-air missiles and a modern radar system that can lock onto targets, even against ground targets, push this Mirage's combat performance onto a new level. We need to mention the missiles too, since they're exclusive to this plane in War Thunder. For close combat, this French plane has some familiar magic missiles. Modification 2, the one with an all-aspect homing device. And for medium range, you can take up to 2 Matra Super 530 F1s. High maximum speed and overload tolerance make it one of the best missiles in its class. The cannons underwent some changes too, increasing their rate of fire and ammo pool. It won't have a major impact on overall performance though, since guns on such fighters are mostly used as a last resort. Still, it's a nice bonus. You can add gun pods to 2 hardpoints if you want, but we can't say it's a great idea. We prefer reserving all hardpoints for missiles. Another nice bonus is the amount of chaff and flares available, twice as much as on its predecessor. A total number is now 120, which is enough to last the whole battle if you use them sparingly. Now, close air support isn't the strongest skill for this French plane. It has no guided air-to-surface munitions, and you won't be overly successful with just bombs and rockets in top battles, even with the help of a ballistic computer. All of this makes the Mirage a pure-blooded fighter, a fearsome machine for air battles designed to be efficient against any air target. Alexander Pakrishkin, one of the highest-scoring Soviet aces, once said, "Fighters don't ask how many enemies, ask, where are they?" Robin Olds, a young USAF captain, was unlikely to have met him in person or heard this phrase. But there's no doubt he'd agree with that notion. He already downed 2 enemy Focke-Wulf planes, and did it in a lightning during a ground attack mission, and at a low altitude no less. A pretty tricky task. His battle mission for the 25th of August 1944 had no free hunting part in it. The plan included a massive bombing attack into Wismar. 4 P-38 planes headed by Olds were to control one of the possible Luftwaffe fighter attack directions. Spotted an enemy? Report to the main escort group. Report. And leave immediately, since 4 Lightnings could do nothing to a large group of German fighters, even in theory. But real life is always different from theory. At around 8.5 kilometers, Olds spotted more than 50 109s. The Armada was going to intercept the American bombers. But Olds didn't turn back, even when 2 fighters in his group did exactly that. Why just leave when you can attack? Down a plane or 2, or at least make the enemy fumble, break formation, slow down the approach? So, what if you're just 2 against 50? They had the altitude advantage, so good for Lightning's turbochargers, and the surprise effect too. The decision was clear. Take the position above the enemy against the sun and attack. And he did attack. The Germans none the wiser. But when the first enemy plane broke apart mid-air, both of Olds' engines died. Why? Well, there was no time to find out. The only thing he could do was to nosedive and leave the battle. His minimum goal, down at least 1 plane and confuse the enemy, had been achieved. But why did the engines die? Suddenly Olds got it. He dropped the external tanks before the battle, but forgot to switch to the internal fuel supply in his excitement. And there was no time to restart the engines. One of the Germans was chasing him, which meant he had to push the handle even further and do 2 things at once: dodge the chaser and try to revive the engines. The second task alone was hard, even under normal circumstances, and seemed simply impossible when there was a German on your 6, guns blazing. The incoming airflow was howling and the fighter's body was screaming with load. The diving speed was too high. One of the canopy windows shattered, incapable of sustaining such a stress. The engines only restarted near the ground, and there was still a chaser close behind. And what could you do on a heavy Lightning against a single-engine Gustav when your plane was almost shaving the grass with its props? Well, engage your flaps, do a displacement roll, let the enemy overshoot, and fire! And the fiery mess of the German fighter crashed a few seconds later. It was done. Time to go home. Time to push the wounded machine towards the English coast at a low altitude. But fate had something else in mind. The main battle was still on high above, and Olds noticed 2 planes circling a little above a kilometer, a Mustang and a Bf-109. Could he leave it as is and simply fly past? No way. He turned back, went into full throttle, and back to battle. A 3rd enemy down. The German was so concentrating hard on the Mustang, he missed another aircraft joining. The Messerschmitt became Olds' 5th victory, officially making him a flying ace. He survived and made it home safely. His career as one of the greatest minds and hands in air combat was only beginning. But that's a story for another time. We recently had a competition of light-tracked tanks, so it's time to compare the top-wheeled ones. Please welcome the contestants: the American M1128 Striker, the German Radkampfwagen 90, the South African Rooikat MTTD, the Japanese Type 16, the ZLT-11 from China, and the Centauro 1 120 from Italy. The first stage will traditionally check our contestants' driving performance on various surfaces. Our contestants take their positions. Let's go! For the first few seconds, they all keep up, but then we spot some leaders and runners-up. The German is the confident leader. Then we see the Reukat and the Type 16 close together, the Italian and the Chinese ones behind, and the striker going last. The snowy patch slows everyone down, and the Centauro allows the American machine to catch up. Not for long, though. The desert forces the striker to lag behind again. The marsh shortens the gaps again, and now we see the Chinese machine overtake the Japanese. And here's the finish line. The Type 16 earns third place almost instantly, and we still see the Radkampfwagen in the lead, followed by the South African Reukat. Now, the fourth place sees some struggle, and the Italian machine snatches it right before the finish. The ZLT-11 comes in fifth, while the striker the sixth. The second stage will test our contestants' survivability. None of them can withstand tank calibers, so we'll use a Soviet 30mm autocannon with armor-piercing rounds at 100 meters. The American machine draws the first match. Its unmanned turret shows an impressive performance. There's nothing to damage besides the gun breech, but the hull can't handle a hit at all. The Reukat shows a similar result. Its large LFP is easy to penetrate, and while the turret is almost unmanned, it still has its share of vulnerabilities. Also, having the ammo in the turret rear certainly doesn't help. The Chinese machine's hull can only be penetrated through a tiny slit between sloped plates. The turret is vulnerable in the cheeks and the lower part of the mantlet. The German machine has a huge vulnerable turret ring, and the lower part of the mantlet sends the ricochets into the thin hull roof. Other contestants have similar issues with protection. The Centauro has a few small vulnerabilities on the turret, while the Type 16 has poorly protected sights. And now for the last part, the shooting range. Our contestants will have to spot two hidden ZTZ-99 tanks at night from 2 kilometers away and destroy them as quickly as possible. Let's go. The tankers pay close attention to their environments, and no less than 3 teams see their laser warning systems light up. The MBTs shouldn't have used their rangefinders. The Japanese and the Italian commanders respond to the threat immediately, spotting the enemy with their thermals and providing target data to the gunners. The Centauro sends 2 APFSDS rounds in 5 seconds, and each of them destroys a target. The Japanese tank needed more time for aiming. Its rounds have less penetration, but both targets are done nonetheless. The Chinese gunner had an LWS-2, but they had to aim on their own. Still, mission accomplished. The American machine reports fourth. Its commander employed thermals and spotted the target pretty quickly too. They could have done it faster if they didn't have the worst reload rate today. Next to finish is the Reukat, and the worst performer here is the Radkampfwagen 90. With no thermal on board, finding an enemy at night is tricky. Let's sum up. The bronze is shared by the German Radkampfwagen 90 and the Chinese ZLT-11. Both have their own strength, but lack balance. The silver goes to the Japanese Type 16. It performed very well in all stages, but couldn't match today's winner. The Italian Centauro 120. It can boast a good level of mobility, a decent amount of armor, and the most powerful gun with the best reload rate. Now, Let's order the crews to peel the dirt off their machines while we answer some of the questions you ask us in the comments. The first question was sent by a player called Jonathan Riley. What makes IR missiles that can be radar-slaved special? Hello, Jonathan. With the use of onboard radar, these missiles can be launched at greater distances. What's more important is their own homing device acquires targets much faster. Johnny Cruez asks, why do the high-tier Leopard, for instance, have the iron sights of the barrel on the side and not the top? Hi, Johnny. What you mean is probably the muzzle reference system, not the iron sights. This system is used to account for the tiniest changes in gun barrel bend produced by the always present temperature differences. You can put it onto any side of the barrel. There would be no difference. Another question comes from Inez Yerman. How can I enable weapon selection in aircraft? Hi there, Yerman. You can use weapon selectors for that, both for fixed and suspended armament. To set up key bindings for them, go to Controls, Aircraft, Weaponry. Extra Game Doom writes, why haven't you guys added the C-47 Douglas? Hi there. We're trying to add vehicles that will feel balanced in the game and find its own role in battles. Wouldn't you agree that playing a transport plane without a single machine gun might feel boring? And the last comment for today was written by Jesse Mongrou. Can you do an episode on the Chinese Type 62? It's such a curious little tank. Hello, Jesse. Why, you're right. It is a curious tank. We'll certainly tell you a story about it. Thanks for the idea. That's it for today once more. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to leave a like, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.